My last question, again, may overlap a little bit because some people were really discussing solutions, but this is more focused on not just what can happen on a government level or as teachers, but what can anyone do? Anyone that's in the audience, or people who are working 9 to 5 in some other job, and but still want to be a part of these change. But anyone that's part of the community issues. Jen has mentioned the whole community. How can they get involved? So Stephen, I'll start with you this time. That's all right.
Well, I already mentioned one way, at least with regard to the No Child Left Behind. You can write the powers that be and tell them that you think that it's, or call them up if you don't want to write. But that's an effective way. Or if you have access to a computer, send an email and tell them how you feel in terms of the system, what needs to be changed in connection with that, whether it's No Child Left Behind or some of these other ideas that we're talking about. I think politicians really respect numbers of protest people that call them up and send them letters. Letters are very, very time intensive, so I think they're very effective, or an email or a call. I think that if you are wanting to deal with something in terms of your local school, I believe, as I said before, and we are going to try and collect information to this effect, that there's huge inequities in terms of the various schools. I think learning a little bit about what sort of resources your schools have, but more specifically what they don't have, okay? And I always used to be impressed when I would see things on TV, and I see these parents at the board meetings, and they'd be making up a big stink about this thing and that. It usually would be with regard to the closing of the school or some decision regarding the principal. But you can go there. You can find out about, we don't have books in our school. We don't have a library. We don't have this or we don't have that, and we know that this other school has it. Okay, why does our school not have it? And you can do that. You can find out about what your school doesn't have and what you think it should have. I'm very impressed actually about these parents that are over at that small school, the Hispanic group that were protesting Whittier School, where they were protesting about the library, about the building being taken away. Here they were going to take this building away and could put a soccer field down for a private school and take it away from them. But they got involved. They put their bodies on the line. They stayed there and made sure that they wouldn't tear it down. They have to tear it down on their heads. I think if you become invested in that degree, anybody can do that. They are, I think, a role model, really, if you will, of the power that people can have if they're willing to place their bodies on their line and put the ultimate challenge. And they have been going to the Board of Education and protesting about their situation. So everybody in that neighborhood, now obviously it's mostly the parents who have students in there, but you don't have to necessarily be a parent. And you don't have to be a parent to write about it. You don't have to be a parent to do a lot of these things. And I do think that the school should be more of a neighborhood resource. It should be a neighborhood school. And we've gotten away from those thinking of schools being neighborhood schools, that's our school. We got away from it, I think, because they used to draw these little lines around neighborhoods in order to make sure that the neighborhood looked a certain color, okay? And that's how we got with the consent decree. But that's how we got with closed enrollment, where they said we're going to guarantee that these schools have at least some type of racial mix, okay? But then what they created now is, as I said before, little different types of entities with racial mix, but they're equally closed. They're closed off, just like these other schools were closed off by the circle that was drawn around them in terms of racism and the consent decree. So I think that there's a lot of, these are some of the things that I think that you can do, individuals can do to address what is really a very big and complex problem.
Yeah.
when I thought of what I would say on this question, I'd say read the articles I write each week on my blog. It's tutormentor.blogspot.com. Follow the links, follow the ideas. One of the articles you would see would be one talking about Thomas Edison. Everyone knows about Thomas Edison did 1,000 experiments before he got a light bulb to work. But then very few people think that after he did that, he had to invent an industry to make the light bulb available all over the world. So if you think of a great teacher or a school full of teachers or a neighborhood full of tutors and mentors as a light bulb, it's going to take lots and lots of experiments before we get to the point where we're consistently helping every kid overcome whatever his challenges are or whatever his opportunities are to be the best they can be. But the system of making that happen in a school, a city of 400,000 kids, that's a much more complex problem, even though the first problem is overwhelming. So I look at architects and engineers. Architects and engineers are people who think sequentially about the steps to solve a problem. You don't start building a building from the 4th floor. You have to clear the land first. You have to then do the blueprint, page after page after page. When we talk about the things we want to have happen, we want better funding, we want better teaching, we want a whole bunch of things. But we need to engage people who will begin to think, well, okay, if we want that, from where we are today to where we want to be, what's the blueprint look like? What would we have to do, step after step, for perhaps decades, to get to where we want to be? Now, in my blog articles, I put these graphics and pictures and I draw diagrams. What if in the school, as part of the writing class, the technology class, the learning class, kids were challenged into problem solving, where they were learning to sequence ideas or draw their own blueprints. If I want to solve a problem, what are the steps to solve the problem? What's the blueprint look like? What's the action plan look like? So I write about these things. I encourage people to think this way. When I talk about engaging groups of people in lots of different places, this is what I mean by engagements. It's not just sitting around and talk about, we got a problem and here's the wishful solutions. Some people got to get the paper out and the drawing board and start sequencing a blueprint of things they think would take us from here to there. Now, they may not be right, but when each one of us starts doing that, we can overlay our blueprints with each other, and now we can begin to see where we converge and where those blueprints might align into something we could all get behind.
Well, I think, first of all, any person at all in the United States can at least, at the very least, just does a decision within their mind, decide to respect what education is. If you respect the value of an education, then you can go on to get involved in other ways. I think that a lot of people sometimes question the value of education in the United States, and I think that that's a problem. So at least at the level of you just sitting thinking by yourself, that's a decision that every single person can do at any time, whether you have children, you teach, or you just live in a particular neighborhood. That's something that every single person can decide to do. And along with that decision, then that can lead to further actions, like writing to your congressman about No Child Left Behind, and working on repealing laws that essentially waste your tax dollars and ruin your neighborhood schools. So that's a decision that every single person can make. Now, more locally, as far as like if you're a parent with children in school, communicate with your child about school. Communicate with your child about the importance of school, about the importance of learning, about the joy of learning. Don't make it seem like they're going to prison for 6 hours a day. Make it seem like learning is something that's important, not just because you have to get a high school diploma to go to college, but because when you learn, it's going to help you in life. It's going to show you how to solve problems. It's going to show you how to create things, how to do the things that you love better. So the more knowledge that you have, the better it is. That's something that parents can do. Kids can be invested in school. That qualifying achievement, making sure that, grades are, not necessarily grades are important, but learning the material is important. Learning about things that interest you is important. Reading
is fun. Not because you have to do it, but because you found a subject that interests you, and now you're researching it on your own because you want to find out more about it. Businesses need to get invested in education, and not just in, oh, give us money, but tell schools what you need. I mean, what kind of workers are you looking for? Are you looking for problem solvers? Are you looking for people that can build machines? I mean, what are you looking for, and what can schools do to get you what you need, to save you money and time, and create a better product in the future? So it really is kind of like a full circle thing. Even if, you've never had children, you've never, worried about your neighborhood school, even if all you can do is stand out on your porch for 5 minutes a day, making sure that the kids are getting in and out of the school safely, that's something that you can do, and it doesn't cost you anything. And ultimately, having a good school in your neighborhood is going to make your neighborhood a much more positive place. I think we've kind of gotten away from the idea of neighbors, quite frankly, in this country. I think we've gotten away from the idea of knowing what was going on. I mean, when I was growing up, my parents could leave me with the next door neighbor if they had to run out in case of an emergency. Most of my students' parents don't even know who lives in their building or on their street. Not by first name, last name, or even if the apartment is vacant or not. So as far as engaging in your own neighborhood, realizing that the school is a major part of your neighborhood, knowing what the school needs, just participating, just being an active participant in the neighborhood, letting people know that you're there. That doesn't cost you a dime, and it doesn't really cost you more than 5 or 10 minutes a day. Waving at the kids as they go to school, saying hello, letting them know, like, hey, I see what's going on, this is my neighborhood, don't litter in my lawn, or whatever it is, so that everybody knows that the neighborhood is kind of this united area, and everyone in it values education, whether or not they have children.
This question seemed to lend itself to very specific, locally based solutions. So some things that I thought of and had other people help me out with. Like one was host a field trip or a study session. Hosting a field trip, a lot of students have no idea what a work environment looks like. They have no idea whatsoever. And they should see one. Many students are trapped. They're trapped in their own neighborhoods. They don't get to go out a lot. They only have a limited view of the city. Think about how many students that I had when I taught in Englewood had never really been out of the neighborhood or never been on the south side. And now, where I teach, there's a lot of students who, when I say south side, freak out that they don't have any concept of what happens in other parts of their own city because they've never really had a chance to go there. So having hosting a trip to a community center on the other side of town, or even in the same part of town but in a slightly different neighborhood, and interacting with people from a variety of groups has a big impact on kids. If you can't host a field trip, go speak at a school. One of the best lessons that I've been able to do over the years was have a Vietnam veteran friend of mine come in and speak honestly about his experiences in war, and the kids have really thought a lot about what that meant to make that commitment and what the impact and the implications were of doing that for yourself, for your country, for your family. And that was really powerful. Or you can volunteer to teach students something that you don't know if you don't feel like you have a very specific skill. Cooking, gardening, knitting, auto repair, whatever. Kids want to learn if they're engaged in it. Join your local LSC, the local school council. Attend meetings even if you're not on it. Go to the CPS board meeting and testify about something you're interested in. Or just watch and see how undemocratic and unelected appointed school board is and what that looks like. Talk with your alderman about and advocate for public education, equitable public education. There's a big push to tear down one of the more democratic and successful institutions we've had in this country. We got to push back. Lastly, this goes with my role with the Chicago Teachers Union. Question from the official line: follow the money. If it seems too easy, it probably is. School is a huge market that's being privatized piece by piece by piece. Why did CPS say they couldn't pay teachers their contractually agreed to raises and yet come up with $150,000 a school for those that have chosen to lengthen the school day? The reality is the money was always there, just didn't want to admit it. And so I think it's really important that we get to a level of honesty and transparency with how schools are funded, and a lot of people have talked to that. And I echo what everybody else already said.